name is Gathingu. I am the CEO and the founder of Takazoletu Limited. I am pleased to see very many of my friends and clients and people I've worked with for very many years. For the 18 years we have been in business. We have conducted the same business, which is technology, over the last 18 years. And I'm glad that we have this opportunity to present to us today. The topic of the day, as you can see, is harnessing data analytics and AI to explore new frontiers of growth in SACCOs. That is a long topic. But if we get anything from it, let us understand using data, let us understand using analytics, artificial intelligence, and growth of SACCOs. I want to just start us off with a simple illustration here. I want us to join me in this so that we can make it quite interactive. So, who can guess what this is as I draw it? Anyone? Okay. Anyone who can tell me what this is? I am not a very good person in terms of art, but I have scribbled something fairly quickly to try and see whether we can understand what I am trying to do here. Don't look at my quality of drawing. Anybody? Anyone? Yes, please. It's a train. What else do you see in this? A railway line. A junction. What else do we see? A destination in Moshi and Arusha. Alright? So we have a train, and I would like that gentleman to be rewarded with something. Please, there must be something we can give to the people who answer my questions. Okay. So we have a train here that is moving, and it needs to make a decision of whether it's going to Moshi or to Arusha. You know that trains always know their destination. So this train today was going to Moshi, right? In the process, who can tell me what they think this is?
We can't see from here.
Oh, you can't see. This is quite complex. I'm wondering how it is. All right, so this train of ours was going to Moshi, but we have a situation here. Who can tell me what is going on here? Yes, please.
Those are guys repairing
These are people repairing, children playing on the railway. Correct, you are right. The children are playing on the railway. And this train is going where? To Moshi.
How do you know that it is going to Moshi?
Because it's scheduled for Moshi.
Because it is outside the railway.
And that's semantics. Please bear with my drawing. Please bear with my drawing. It is going to Moshi. Okay, it's at the junction. Let's assume it has been scheduled to go to Moshi. Alright?
Yeah.
But I like the participation. This train is moving at 150 kilometers per hour. And between the train and the first charge, we have 20 meters. Or let's say we have 50 meters. Which basically means that the train will get here very, very fast. Right? Now, what would you do if you are the train driver? You would divert to? You would reroute to Arusha. You would reroute to Arusha? Okay. Anybody else with any other suggestion?
Stop.
You would stop the train.
Stop the train. 50 meters.
Have you done the physics of understanding how quickly you can stop a train moving at 150 kilometers per hour and figure out that you can stop it in 50
I'm
minutes?
saying so because for the railway, the train is scheduled to Mosh. So at the junction, it has already been set to go to Mosh. It cannot divert to Arusha.
Who told you?
Because those are what we call not mechanics on the rail. Normally, as it is, the train is coming, some people will normally change to where the destination is.
All right. So this particular train of ours, so I want us to agree up to there that you have an opinion, that you will divert the train. Or you will stop it and you will divert it. All right? Now, there happens to be one child there. Okay? And it happens that this train cannot stop at the rate at which it ought to avoid getting to any of these children. I would want to understand, what would you do? You would hoot at the children. Yes, please. The lesser you hit, so you would hit this one, and you save this one. Umalize huyu.
Kama ingekuwa ni gari, ingefanya hiyo. Lakini train,
Ungemaliza huyu mmoja.
ingefanya.
Wanamoja.
50 meters, you just clear them. Unaenda nao, unaanguka nao. Ni kuanguka nao.
Yes. You just continue. Unasema hawa wameishi karibu hapa, anajua mambo ya Mogidi, pita na wao.
Unaanguka nao.
Maliza wote.
Unaanguka nao.
Ujione kwa gazeti kesho. Vile umemaliza watu. Haya. That is another one. Please, madam. You derail the train. Ay. Okay. Are you aware whether the train is empty with yourself only or with passengers?
There you are.
And if you derail this train, what is likely to happen?
Ataenda.
Mogidi ilale. Tuangushe wale wako ndani. Tumalize wao. Sema. Continuously boot for these children to move.
And stop.
And in good time. If I hoot one way or the other, I think, based on my story, because it's mine, I can make it anything. These children cannot move as fast as possible.
Exactly.
So, how would you, and I want us to now focus ourselves on which route would I take this train? One person would derail it, another one would move it this way, another one would move it. I want two last opinions from somebody who has not spoken, yes? You choose the lesser evil. Unasema huyu moja aende. Let me add something else to my story. 2 weeks ago, there was a publication on the media about children playing on the railway. And children were asked not to play on the railway. And it was repeated time and again. So, would you still choose the lesser evil? Yes. For saving many. Good. She will be able to still choose the lesser evil because she has a responsibility of protecting many lives. Are we all together up to there? I want to ask her a question. What if this one child is your son? He listened to the stories about playing on the railway. He knew where the train is going.
You don't know that time.
Play on the side where the train was going.
No.
He's playing on the safer side. What would you do?
Are you sure it's your son?
That's how you voice.
Are you sure it's your
This
son?
is my story. I can make it anything. Yes. You will still be choosing the lesser evil.
You know, Greece. That's how
Yes. So you go on with your work, the news will come to you later. Hata kama umeona ile kangu amevaa ni yeye, bado utapeleka hivyo tu.
But in that case, the rest evil changes. The rest evil is the other side.
The lesser evil now changes
Yes.
to securing this one.
Yes.
Kumaliza hii tatu.
Akiwa ni wako,
Eh.
the rest evil changes.
The lesser evil changes.
Yes.
And now you go and protect this one and move on to the others. Right? I want to basically ask you guys, who thinks there is a right answer? What is the right answer?
50 meters.
What is the right answer to this challenge?
Your challenge is now.
It will depend on what? On the circumstances of the story. It depends on the circumstances of. Now, when we first presented it, there were easy or hard answers.
Easy.
They were very easy. And we could say, let's stop the train, let's divert it, let's do this and that. But what have we noticed as we have acquired new information in the situation? We have populated our challenge with more data and content, and progressively as we do that, our decision making is being refactored. And ladies and gentlemen, today, as we talk about harnessing data, analytics, and AI to explore new frontiers of growth in the Sacco sector, we're really talking about how we can make decisions about our institutions, how we can be able to use data to help us to progress and to deliver on our mandate as a Sacco movement. I'm going to make two different presentations. And one of the ones that I want to talk about is what we just spoke about here, because it's a foundational issue of making decisions, and it's also the foundational issue of data analytics, of decision making and artificial intelligence. So this is the same thing that we had there. Every now and then, we will be faced with a need to make a decision that is strategic, that is complex, that is difficult for us in our organizations at any one time. And we have to always finish and make the decisions. When people see others sitting in the corner house or the corner office, and I keep telling this to my staff sometimes they assume that it's a very good place for you to be. But many times you're faced with that kind of decision, where you're basically trying to ask yourself, what do I do? Am I going to look at the lesser evil? Am I going to look at the morals, the ethics? Am I going to look at what may help me make this particular decision? And there are different kinds of decisions that we make. The first one is called a rational decision. You rationalize what you are trying to do, all right? And when you rationalize what you're trying to do, it's like saying, if these children had already been told not to play, and they still play, then so be it. We continue, like Elizabeth was saying. She will continue with the path, or rather, somebody said that they will continue with the path the way they have been told. Other decisions are driven based on morals. what morals am I going to use? For instance, we talk about different things like, upholding our work and making sure that our companies comes first. At all times, we'll be faced with those kind of decisions, and we must be able to make decisions based on moral perspective. Sometimes we make emotional decisions. When I threw in the aspect of the child is yours, now the emotional part comes in, and we're trying to make a decision based on emotions. So there are different kinds of decisions. Some are mechanically right, and what we were talking about there is perhaps a decision that is right for everybody. It just depends on what perspective you're looking at it from. Mechanically right decisions, and other decisions which would perhaps be not mechanically right, but they might be morally right for us to carry on with the work that we do. But as you look at the work that we're doing every day, as board directors, as CEOs, as leaders of our institutions, we must be able to all the time ask ourselves, how are we making our decisions in the boardroom? There are different things that we do when we're making decisions. And the first one is a 5-step decision-making guide for business problems and solutions. You will be faced with a problem, and it's important for you to define that problem, to look at the alternatives. If there's a problem here, and for instance, the train approaching the children at a very fast rate is a problem. Then the alternatives are, shall I divert? Shall I derail the train? Shall I move it to the other side? Or what can I do? And then once you do that, then you actually get into the place of evaluation. So you are evaluating the decision and trying to ask yourself whether this decision really makes sense. And you need to then have a criteria and then to make the action that you're taking to help with the decision. So this is not the main part of my presentation, and that's why I'm skipping it very quickly. But you will find that our key aspects of decision making today are being based upon data, upon what we know about the situation, upon the circumstances that we have. And there's quite a number of things that we talk about, which are the psychological traps of decision making. We are all decision makers. And whenever we're trying to make decisions, there are certain things that occur to us and that they might become traps that will stop us from making the right decisions. Number one, the anchoring trap. I want to talk about, so this is one of the things that we have there, and I'll just pick the second alternative, which basically says, Mr. Muturi once made a very beautiful speech to the congregation. One day, the vicar or the pastor was looking for a guest speaker to speak to the congregation. When the vicar asked the congregation to nominate a guest speaker, the congregation chose to have Mr. Mwangi instead. How could this be the case? If you were the one who was told that Mr. Muturi made a very good presentation to this congregation, and this man was here. And then tomorrow or next time somebody is asked to pick somebody who can make a good presentation. How is it and who would you pick? What I have really done there is that I have anchored your thinking around Mr. Muturi. Then I have asked you a question that suits him. And then I want you to answer a question. So you do not have the reaction time to think about somebody else. Somebody will say, Mr. Muturi did a good job, may he speak to us again. And many times when we are making decisions in our boardrooms, in our offices, different people will use different tricks to guide us towards making decisions which perhaps would not really be the best. In this particular case, maybe Mr. Muturi was not the right forum because it was now a conversation around health, and yet he is a scientist, he is a mathematician. So the anchoring trap is one we have to be aware of. We have another one called status quo trap, right? And in the status quo trap, what we're trying to do all the time is that we're trying not to change too much. And I have seen this with many of us. Whenever something threatens to change us, then we want to stay on the status quo, right? And we have seen, even when things need to be done, and I am asked a question, I still take a position which is very close to what I currently have, and that is the status quo trap. I'm moving fast because this is not the main area of my conversation, but it lays a foundation of what we're going to talk about. We've got other traps, like the sunk cost trap. The sunk cost trap is a trap we have seen very many people doing. I have perhaps engaged an employee who is perhaps been with me for 10, 15 years, and they are still not delivering, but I have paid him so much money that I don't want to let go of him now because I feel like the money is lost. And we've seen this in many cases where maybe the decision is not about an employee, it's even about, you know, a piece of land that you bought, you have started constructing, you have realized it's a wrong decision, but you've already sunk in quite a bit of money into it and you don't want to stop. And many others, confirming evidence trap. This is a trap where you're trying to confirm. You already know what decision you want, but you're trying to ask the question in a manner to suggest that the answer should be what I am actually talking about. And different other kinds of traps that we have here. Framing trap, again, is the way we frame the problem. We can frame a problem in a way that the answer will likely be what I want it to be. And we have seen many people using this, and you know, politicians are very good at it because they will always ask, sasa kama kuna wezi wawili, huyu ni mkubwa, huyu ni mdogo, nani better? So already there is no question you are being asked there. The answer is in the question. So they have just framed it in a manner that you will answer what they want you to answer. Overconfidence trap is another kind of trap where people are always overconfident and they just make a decision based on the confidence levels that they feel, overruling other aspects of decision making. Prudence trap is a trap that is very common with accountants because they are always very prudent. They don't want to make a single mistake. And they will always be trying to see how do we make sure that the decision is the best one. And you can see an accountant struggling with a simple decision for almost a whole week just because they just want to tick all the boxes correctly. And of course, there's another one called recallability trap, which really is a trap which comes to you when you recall something. So for instance, in our culture, and I know we have many of us here from the mountain, we always say that if umekulwa na nyoka, hapa, and then as you walk, you see a string, many times you are likely to jump because you recall about the snake, and then you jump. And in what we are doing every day, we are really making decisions as we progress. So I want to really continue by saying that the difference between most of us, who we are, and who we could be, is really in the quality of the decisions that we make continuously. If you look at each one of us here, if I am a chairman, if I am a CEO, if I am a finance person, the really big difference between all of us is about the decisions that we have made over time. Up to there, do we understand how crucial it is to make the right decisions? We are together on the understanding of the importance of making the right decisions. I've taken a bit of time because artificial intelligence and all these things we're talking about is about decision making. It is about us having decisions being made with the precision, with the quality of what we look at. And I want to just talk about, somehow my screen is not moving forward, some of the wisdom that has come from the godfathers of data, and godfathers in quotes. If you look at this, some of the things that it says there is that there's this gentleman who says, data will talk to you if you are willing to listen. If you are willing to listen, data will talk to you. Yes, you have a question? All right, so as he gets his microphone, Data will talk to you as if you're willing to listen. But data will not come to push you to listen. You have to go out looking for it so that you can listen. Please, you can have your question.
Okay, thank you. Before you go to the data, my question is about decision making.
Okay.
Because that one is the key, and that is in conjunction to what we do every day in our institutions. To make a decision, the right decision, you have analyzed the examples of decisions, but there is that book written by Professor Beatty from Gathingu about how leaders fear to make decisions because they will affect their colleagues like that. But the underlying one is that you should make a decision according to policies.
Yes.
If there are policies in all the operations in an institution governing every operation, then to make decision on this will not be something to beat about.
Correct.
So I think the first thing, other than so many decisions, is that in our institutions, every operation, it should have policies and guidelines. And then as we make decisions on the same, then we shall not fail. Thank you. And it is saying, it is better to make a wrong decision than not making a decision at all, if you are an administrator. So I think that is policies, then decisions. Business analysis, business focus, and decisions on the same, then we get the data, we analyze, and then we move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much for that input. And I do agree with you that our decisions, especially for the kind of institutions that we run, have to be anchored on something. Remember, you're only representatives of the people that you serve. And therefore, there needs to be a pattern of how we are making these decisions. And as much as possible, if we have those policies, then they can guide us to make those decisions. That's a very interesting input, a very interesting perspective there as well, that we need to have these policies. But remember, we're in an evolving world. And the world that we have today is ever changing. So we need to also make our policies as updated as possible so that we can be able to actually also take up the right decisions whenever they present themselves. So thank you for that input. I will agree with it, but I will also say that it's important that we also are open-minded as we carry on and see whether it's time for us to review our policies. We have them, can we improve them, can we carry on with them the way they are? So thank you for that. I'll move on to some of the other wisdom that's there. And it says that without data, you are just another person with an opinion. And sometimes that's very true, because our MC and the gentleman who was trying to really help us here to open up and to warm up asked us to just give an answer of what the other person is doing with his fingers. How much data did you have? And how successful were you? Again, when you look at that, the decision that you made was based perhaps on purely guesswork because you did not have the data. And how many times are we faced with challenges like these ones, where we just sit and say, we are the committee, we are the board, we are the this and that, and we need to make a decision. And we are making a decision based on some voting rights and some necessarily having that kind of content. So if we do not have the right data, then we just have an opinion, and perhaps the answer is going to be far from what we have. If you torture the data enough, then it will confess to everything. We all know about what confession is, and especially if you're a Catholic. A confession is a time when you want to go and tell somebody something that you are perhaps the only one who knows. And in this case, we are saying that the data might know what you actually want to tell. But if you torture it enough, if you interrogate it enough, it will confess to whatever you want to do. And of course, it's a famous one, in God we trust, and everybody else has to bring data. This just helps us to keep the foundation of what we are looking at today. So what is data? what is data for us today as we are here? I have given, the challenge that we had, and I started with only a simple train and a radio. Then you got additional information, they are children. You get additional information, the train is moving at this pace. You get additional information that the child is actually yours. All these aspects are what we categorize as data. These are facts that are there about certain situations, and these facts actually are the ones that we anchor or we reference when we're looking at the subject that we're looking at. So they could be anything, numbers, they could be facts, they could be observations, they could be just about anything that you know that is out there. And data has really evolved in our day-to-day work. Perhaps some of you might remember this style of work, because I think this is where most of us began from. If our SACCOs are, they were called what? BBC, born before computers. Most likely we will recall how we stored our files. And our files being stored in this particular way really has raw data being put there, and we don't have too many options. You can imagine if you're making a decision on advancing somebody alone with this kind of setup, then the process that you will go about being quite heavy. And data has then evolved to the next stage, which you can see. This is digitized raw data. So it is really what is in the files, but it has been packaged into an Excel file. So everything that you had in the file has just been transposed and put into the Excel file. And this is really the first evolution of data archiving and data management that happened, because we were just able to move it from the manual into the Excel file. This is perhaps where we are today, and we're talking about processed loan reporting listing. So perhaps if you go to your system, these are the kind of reports you'll be able to see. This is a report for the loans, this is a report for our members, this is a report for our shares, this is a report of our performance. And from time to time, you can be able to actually pull out this data from your system. But tell you what, this is perhaps the direction that we ought to go. And this is the evolution, the next level of evolution of the data processing that we actually will be looking at. This is an analyzed loan statement, which is going to give you more information than what you would have otherwise got from the raw Excel file, from the storage files, and from the different categories that we have. So I'm just trying to make sure that we are working together in terms of the evolution of data, where it began, where it has been, where it is today, and where it really ought to go. You can imagine if you are in a board meeting and you need to make a decision based on what you're seeing here. The first thing there is the total number of loan applications, 38.6 thousand. If you already have a target of having 100,000 loans being applied, and today is November 5th or 6th, which decisions would you be making? You already have a target as a company to disburse 100,000 loans, and you are at 38.6 thousand in terms of the numbers of loans. And the target was for this year. What decision would you be making?
The decision, of course, will be based on what is available at that particular moment and the demand.
So what is available and the demand, and how you can be able to grow this number to what your target was. But right now you have been given information that at the glance of things you can be able to actually make that quick judgment and quick decision. So data has a life cycle just like anything else. Data is born one day and data is retired on the last date. And the life cycle really entails certain things. The first step is to really collect the data that we actually have. And collection of data can be done in different ways. You can do manual collection of data, which basically means that you can go conduct interviews, do polls, do things like questionnaires, and different ways of collecting data. And once you collect this data, you are then able to store it to where it ought to be. So that's one of the ways of collecting data. But there is a second way of collecting data, which is called automated or derivative. collection of data. This is perhaps what we are doing most today. As your people are transacting in the office, or rather with their phones, they are dialing their USSDs, they are actually accessing money, they are transferring their balances, they are checking their balances. All that is generating a ton of data. And this data is not necessarily somebody asking them a question, but it is being derived out of our daily operations. The second thing, once we collect our data, is to store the data. How do we store our data? Back in those days, we were storing it in files. Now we can actually store it in digital systems. And today, each one of us, I'm sure, has got servers. We are storing our data in those servers. And there's a very interesting question that was asked, whether you should store the data on the cloud or on your own servers. And I think both of them have been talked about. They all have their pros and cons. And the question is about how do we store and in which formats do we store our data. Progressively, then there is a next step of the data evolution, which is to do the data processing. And data processing for us is to look at this data that we have and ask ourselves, how do we process it to make sense, to be able to move from data to information? So this may involve certain things like cleaning up the data, grouping and modeling, transforming the data, analyzing the data, so that these data can be positioned in a manner that can be able to communicate to us, that can be able to be usable and to give us the best outcomes. Remember, data is what we are using for decision making. And the more it is processed, the better it is presented, then the better it is for us. Again, back to that screen, where after you have processed the data, you're able to now do what we call data presentation or visualization for usage. And you'll find that some of us really may have this kind of tools, which is called like a business intelligence tool, which can be able to communicate to you the overall status of your organization at a glance. So they will use certain things, and these items can be used to do certain things like give you key insights, make decisions, improve processes, make new products, etc., etc. And of course, beyond that, the final step is for us to then ask ourselves, how do we retain our data? Data has a life cycle, and regardless of what you like, it is very difficult for you to store all the data that you ever come across, because we have a limit in terms of the capacity of our servers, we have a limit in terms of even the amount of data and wealth of knowledge that we can store, even in our own minds. So, do we destroy or do we archive data? What are the policies that we have? The kind of financial institutions are perhaps required to retain data for a certain duration of time so that we're able to really carry on. So what we're talking about really is our ability to, is an understanding of the evolution of data and really where it comes from, how we archive it, how at the very end, or how we discard it. And this is governed by a data policy that we may be able to create. So, I wanted to talk about business intelligence because data, I am dwelling on it because it is the foundation of making decisions, it is the foundation of artificial intelligence. But before we go to artificial intelligence, we can talk about business intelligence. Business intelligence is really the possibility of you to have data processed, analyzed, and presented in a manner that can be able to help you make good business decisions. And as you can see there on the screen, if you're talking about the number of members that you have, and they're being displayed in a form of a tab, or you're talking about the loans that you've distributed, and they're being displayed easily, then it makes a lot more sense. I want to show you just a couple of examples of real business intelligence reports that can be used perhaps even by a CEO or even by the board. And you can see here, this is just a simple business intelligence report on the general Sacco study. And at a glance, you would like to know perhaps, and this is just out of actual just quick thinking. what is our total asset base? Do we have to go into the Excel file? Do we have to go into our system to extract this? Or can we have something like this that is just giving us other things like our loan book, our sum of deposits, total revenues that we have made over the year, the membership, the active loans, etc., etc. And you can see even in terms of the numbers of employees and all that. So that if somebody is looking to understand your institution, there can be a simple dashboard that can give you information around what you currently are having as your institution. Another kind of BI report can be like perhaps what is used by our credit departments. This is just a simple illustration of how our loan book has grown. Again, remember that information is there within our systems, but are we able to harness it and present it in a manner that can help us as board members, as CEOs, to be able to make decisions as we go? The loan book is growing there, and you can see similarly the asset base is growing. And these are important reports that can be used by CEOs, by credit committees, etc. Look at this, perhaps, which is also a sample member analysis report, which can be able to actually tell you, based on the members that you have, what are their ages and how do they come about in the Sacco. A very interesting perspective here, we're able to categorize 40.55% of our members are possibly above the age of 50, between 50 and 60. And I think we'll get to a point where we ask ourselves then what is the decisions that we would make out of things like those. Another one here, which is just showing you the number of members based on the regions that they are coming from. You can see some coming from Kiambu, Nyeri, Nyandarua, Uasin-Gishu, and many other places. And data just being able to be presented to you in a manner that you're able to consume it. And finally, we also have another report here, which is like a sectorial performance report, which basically is also perhaps one of the things that even our regulator is keen on understanding. Out of the loans we are disbursing, how many are going to which part of things? Is it construction? Is it development? Is it agriculture? Is it manufacturing, etc.? So that we're also able to understand the data that we are using or the people that we are serving. How are they anchored within our institutions? Another one here, loan management, similar to the other one that we had, but in tiles, and even some of the others like these ones, which you're really looking at your transactions that have been happening on your system, and you're able to actually internalize this quickly. Now, in our SACCOs, how well equipped are we with information and data and statistics like this? And can you imagine a SACCO which has to use the Excel format of making decisions and storing their data, and one that uses this kind of tools? And you're competing in the same industry for the same customer and trying to actually acquire growth as a business together. So you find that business intelligence are things that we make for ourselves to be able to make decisions that will help our institutions to grow. So I'll probably want to pause there and check whether we have any questions up to there, so that we can move on to the next few slides. So we've talked about business intelligence, which is the process of us collecting our data, harnessing it, organizing it, and presenting it to ourselves in a manner that can help us to make decisions in the best way possible and acquire the best growth for our institutions. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Voka Paul. Sometimes you may and later, because of the institutions runs into Lego issues, and such a data is required, you dispose it. How?
Have you gotten that?
Not really.
Okay, can just recap, keep it a little bit farther.
Yeah, I'm saying that you talked about data and the disposal of data. Sometimes you may either have archived or done away with it completely. And then later the institution enters into legal issues. And such data is required as an evidence in court. What will you do?
Yeah, so thank you for that question, and it's a really good question because it's practical, and I think people are actually facing those kind of challenges from day to day. Data at one point, you have to make a decision as to whether to archive or whether to discard it. And your question is about whether you have made a decision to discard this data, and then at a later time it is required. So certain decisions, how to make decisions on data archiving is usually based on our policies around data. So we have a data policy, which is a data retention policy, which can determine that you need to archive the data maybe once it's older than 7 years, and when it gets to 15 years, then you can be able to really do away with it. The good thing is that the law also recognizes this limitation of our ability to retain the data for forever. And even when you go to some of the areas that we have, like KRA, you will find that they actually require us to retain data up to 7 years. So it is very difficult for them to ask us to give them data that is older than 7 years, because the law does recognize that we may be forced to archive this data. But in unique circumstances where you really have to produce this data, whether the law is on your side or not, you have certain options that you can look at, which are probably things like data recovery. If you had the hard disks that you had stored this data, there are people who can be able to extract this data for you and be able to help you to recover it from what you had archived for. But the truth is, once you have deleted the data and deleted it permanently, it might be very difficult for you to then get it back and present it. But the other way that people do it is that, and one of the reasons why you still find the registries of institutions still existing is because although on the soft area of things, on the laptops, the servers we may delete, you might find that we're still retaining the data within our hard copies. So fortunately, the law does recognize and it does give you exemptions after a certain level when they can decide that it is reasonable that you could have actually deleted that data. But it's a challenge that you will face, and I guess at that point, then you will make a decision as to whether you want to try and recover the data or whether you want to just face the facts that you really may not be able to provide that data and therefore look for alternatives. So I don't think it was a very straight answer, but it is really what it is. Any other questions?
Somebody?
Thank you for the chance. You talked about demographics and you gave an example. How can these help SACCOs to make strategic and planning and decision making that can assist the SACCOs do better than what they are doing at the moment? In a nutshell.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's as though you know what is my next topic, because the foundation is data. But then the question is, once you have the data, you have analyzed it, you have seen it, then how do you make the right decisions? How do you progress forward? So if you don't mind, I will tackle that in the next slide as we carry on, because that is what now helps us to evolve to the next use of data. Any other question before I close and move? Thank you. We have looked at the data that has been presented there, and we have been able to actually see how that data can help us to gain insights, to be able to actually see the overall look of our institutions as we carry on. But data is best used for decision making. And some of the things that we actually do is to look at analytics of this data. And analytics is split into 5 different categories that you're able to actually work with. The first one that you can do, you can actually be able to conduct analytics of your data for a simple purpose of describing what is going on. And this is what we call descriptive analytics. Descriptive analytics. Based on the data that we have, and we have seen that presenting to us the age of people, the place where they're coming from, and different things, you are actually capable of just describing what your situation really is in your institution. And that's the most foundational aspect of data analytics. Being able to do descriptive analytics can help you to understand, based on your current organization, where are you. The second one is something called diagnostic analytics. Diagnostic analytics is something that is conducted when we have a challenge whom we do not understand where it's coming from, and we torture the data so that it can diagnose for us the problem. So in many cases, you're able to really look and say, perhaps if people are defaulting on their loans, then can we be able to interrogate this data and find out why are people defaulting on their loans? When you interrogate this data, you're able to find the answer to why. And it all lies within the data that we have. That is diagnostic, which is why this is happening. The third level is what we call predictive analytics. Predictive analytics is what is going to happen in future based on what happened in the historic days and based on what is happening today. An example quickly that we will look at in the next slide. Anyway, we'll come to that. But prescriptive analytics is our ability to determine what is likely to happen in future based on what has happened in the past and based on what is happening currently. And of course, the last one is cognitive analytics. Cognitive analytics is how we continue to learn and improve. And that answers your question as to, based on what we have analyzed, what are we able to do so that we can deal with the situations that we have and progress? Ladies and gentlemen, I am trying to retain it at a very simple level. I hope it is simple enough for us to actually see, because these are really things that we continue to look at, explore, and deal with on a daily basis. I want to possibly just look at what are some of the benefits of intelligence reporting. I think this should have come at the previous slide. But let me just explain some of the importances of having this business intelligence reporting that we have seen. Number one, the speed and the quality of decisions that we are able to make based on business intelligence is highly accelerated because the data is talking to us and giving us the insights that we need. Other things include optimizing internal business processes. Once we see where our bottlenecks are, based on the analysis of our data, we are really able to optimize our internal operations, increase operational efficiency. We have been able to see institutions take on data and find ways to increase their efficiency, and you see examples of that as we carry on. Drive higher sales. We had a very interesting scenario where a client was able to do an analytics of how they are being able to acquire clients and our members. And based on the learnings that they have there, they were able to see where to put the effort so that they could grow the numbers on where they wanted to go in terms of member recruitment, develop stronger business practices, gain competitive advantage. As again, I talked about that Sacco which is using the fires versus that one which is using the business intelligence to make decisions. Identify challenges that need addressing ahead of time, identify emerging business markets and trends, and the list is endless. because we are decision makers and our role is to see how to advance our institutions forward. So this slide should have just come before the analytics part, but I'll just move quickly into what we call predictive analytics. And predictive analytics is one of the foundations of artificial intelligence. Predictive analytics is the ability for you to make an inference, or for you to predict the likelihood of something to occur based on the data that you currently have, historically or current. So if we look at this slide, which we have just come from before, and you can see this is really a demographic slide, which is showing us the age distribution of our members in our institutions. 40% is a population between 50 and 60 years old in this particular sample. 19% is between 40 and 50 years old. 15% is between 30 to 40, and on and on. And as you can see, the ages and the numbers of people are reducing as you carry on. So in predictive analytics, we then are required to ask ourselves, if I was the CEO or if I was the board, what can I predict will be the fate of this Sacco in the next 10 years? In the next 10 years, what will have happened out of this Sacco, Madam Grace?
For example, if the majority of the members are aging, and we don't come up with strategies of ensuring that we get younger people, then the Sacco may with time not have enough membership, not grow in the appropriate way.
Correct. Very interesting. You have been able to predict that unless something different happens, this Sacco might not move in the right direction because they don't have a young population that's coming up. And they have an aging population which perhaps in the next 5 to 10 years, most of them will be out of a job. Your remittances or your payrolls that come from TSC are no longer coming, and they are actually reduced. And here we are as an institution looking at how do we move in the future. So these are the key things that help us to make decisions, because we can use predictive analytics to agree or to see where is this institution going and help us to carry the right decisions as we go. Examples of predictive analytics, questions that we can ask ourselves are we likely to reach our annual financial targets with the current data trends? If you analyze your data, you'll be able to see maybe at half of the year, you are at 30% of your target. At 3/4 of the year, you are at 50%. And 1 month time, you are actually at 70%. And you can ask yourself, are we likely to meet our annual targets? And more often than not, you find that the answer is no. If you look at the history, and you can see that based on the trend that we have been doing, we are not getting there. So how likely are we to retain our customer base based on our current setup? This is a very interesting question. I happen to have been introduced to SACCOs when I was very young. My father was the treasurer of a Sacco where he worked. And he forced us all to have Sacco accounts. And we religiously saved with this particular Sacco, putting money every now and then. As we have grown older, we have gone back to this Sacco that we hold so dearly because it has helped us. It actually helped me buy my first car. Gone to them and told them, guys, I cannot be able to be coming to the Sacco every day to access my financial statements, to check my balances, to do anything. And they have continued to say that we cannot introduce technology because there are thieves who are stealing from us through the technology. I have offered to give them solutions for free so that I can retain this Sacco that has helped me, but they have actually refused. What is the likelihood that they will retain me as a client? And we have to ask ourselves like that. If we look at our members, based on what we are doing on a day-to-day basis, what is the likelihood that we will continue to retain them? And we have seen scenarios where maybe a Sacco is in a certain building, and a bank comes next and installs a branch there. And one of the key questions people ask themselves very quickly is, what is the likelihood that we will retain the clients that we have, and they will not be stolen by the next bank or a Sacco who has opened a branch and all that? And the answer is really in data. If we can be able to understand why are our clients with us, then you're able to answer the question of whether you'll be able to retain them. When our branch is likely to break even, which products are likely to thrive at various times of the month or the day. I know we are in a period where we're just about to pay dividends, and I know all of our dividend advance products are probably out there. And we can predict that as of today, that product will keep being used because we're in that particular season. Which sector of the economy should we focus on? Are interest rates going to grow or shrink? And this is really the foundation of us to ask ourselves, what should we then do based on our prediction? Allow me to skip this. These are complex slides about the Internet of Things, which is a discussion for another day. But let me get into artificial intelligence. And this is a big word that everybody talks about. I would want that once we are out of here today, we can actually participate in a conversation where artificial intelligence has been mentioned. Really struggling to compete with the guy hitting the hammer. Artificial intelligence is the ability of a digital system or a computer or a computing device to conduct itself and deliver as though it was an intelligent being. Remember, our phones are just things. And in the beginning, they created man, who was the intelligent person. But man has gone about and created items which are intelligent. One of the most intelligent items we have with ourselves is our phones. Because our phones will tell us so many things. They will inform us when we need to pick the phone. They will tell us about the weather. They will tell us different things. And therefore, artificial intelligence is the ability of a digital computer or the ability of a computing device to conduct itself in a manner likely to suggest that it is intelligent. Now, the foundation of artificial intelligence is nothing but data and decision making, because the device will make a decision based on the data and the actions that you give them. I want to give you a couple of examples of some implementations of artificial intelligence. Back in the days in 2005, I did a course that was housed at Sacco, and we had an exchange program with Nigeria and with a business school, which a professor that was here 2 days ago happened to be my lecturer in that course. Of course, we were young, we still are, but as we were forced to go back home from Lagos, and we had not yet gone out to see Lagos nightlife, we decided we were going to go and explore how does Lagos operate. So in the night, with our flight at 8 a.m., we were out there trying to understand where do people go to have a drink, what do they do, and all that. And as we continued to enjoy ourselves, I decided to go to sleep at 4 in the morning. And the thing about sometimes when you're making decisions when you are not in your own state is that the decision is sometimes influenced by your own state. We decided that we will sleep in the airplane so we can go out and then we just have enough time to prepare and go to the airport, so that when you get into the airplane, for the next 5 hours you will be asleep, and then we will land. And woe unto me, just about when we wanted to go and sleep, I woke up to the captain of the airplane that is flying us to Nairobi, and the gentleman is dead asleep. he has been vomiting. He's sitting there and he's saying, we need to go and sleep. Can you guess what was my first action? I went online and tried to look for another flight and asked, can I postpone my flight? Because if this is the guy who is supposed to deliver us to Nairobi, and at 4 a.m. he is sleeping on the desk with an inability to actually function, then you are wondering, how will this guy get us there? And just like that, I see the first officer, the guy they are flying the plane with, right next to him. And the first officer is in a bit of a compromising state. And I wonder to myself, is there a way I can find a different flight? Fast forward, we wake up the guys and we say, guys, we need to go and sleep. And they're like, okay, fine, it's still early. And at 4:30, we stroll out and we go and sleep. I cannot get a wink of sleep when I think about the flight. And I call the captain and I tell him, I am going to sit in the cockpit with you. You are not going to sleep. I will make sure you are awake the whole time. And the guy's like, don't worry, we'll make it. And I'm short of calling the entire class and colleagues and tell them the tragedy that awaits us. So fast forward, we get into the plane and we take our seats and we hear the captain talking and saying, passenger Chris Gathingu required at the front. So I walk to the cockpit and the guy sets up a seat for me and I sit there. And he tells me, we will teach you a few things today. So I'm wondering, how are these guys? My job now is to sacrifice my sleep so I can keep these few guys awake. And as they fly the plane, we get onto the runway, I do my prayers very faithfully, and I tell God, really keep me safe on this flight, and I will be very careful with the captains I choose. We get onto the runway, he runs his plane, and I can see them having some very serious conversation between the captain and the first officer, and they lift the plane with the steering wheel, and you can see it coming up. And during that time, there's a lot of activity. They're pushing buttons, they are talking to each other, they are talking to somebody at the control room. And in a record 10 to 15 minutes, we are up in the sky and we are at something called cruising altitude. And as soon as we are on cruising altitude, they make an announcement, say, we are on cruising altitude, we're going to go and blah, 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 and enjoy your flight. And these guys remove their headphones and they sleep. And I wake them up, guys, get up, why you sleeping? And the guys say, don't worry, we have done this thing. And we keep moving. And my job, I happen to have gone to Mango High School. And I studied aviation for 2 years. So I knew a few things about how to fly a plane. In fact, on another day, I'll tell you how we got stuck on a plane, on a tree, on a plane that we had in Mango. We were flying it and we landed on a tree. And we had to climb down the tree and call for people to bring the plane down. But I had a good, I was able to really observe that these guys had an interesting plan. Ahead of time, they had keyed in on a tablet device the route that the aeroplane needs to take between Lagos and Nairobi. They had keyed in what we call significant points in the airspace, which are points where the aircrafts are allowed to fly on. They had put in an entire flight path, which really suggests to you how this airplane is going to fly. They had keyed in the altitude as 33,000 feet above sea level and everything else, and they went to sleep. And that plane flew itself from that time for another 5 hours until we were about to land. And just to be kind to them, I allowed them to sleep in turns. I said, look, you can sleep, he can be awake. And when he gets to sleep, you have to come up. And literally as we progressed, the guys were able to take their turns and we were able to bring down the aircraft. Again, when they were bringing down the aircraft, they make the announcement, we are about to descend, and put on your seatbelts, and then they bring down the aircraft using the steering wheel and just bringing it down. At the point where they were flying it, they had done what is called artificial intelligence, and the plane is designed to fly itself. One of the easiest jobs you can do is become a pilot, because you only have two tasks: to lift up the plane and to land it. The rest is done automatically. Can you imagine the people who design an aeroplane with a maximum takeoff weight of thousands of tons, designing an aeroplane to be up in the sky, to be flying itself with all the weight without coming down, and to just be staying and heading in a direction? So you are very right to say that perhaps if I rely on the data that is too old, then I am not in touch with what's happening today. So as technology companies, if a company really tells you that they have a 5-year strategic plan, just know there is a problem. Even 3 years is such a stretch. A maximum of 2 years would really be what you can be looking at, because things are changing, and if you change with them, you learn quickly, then you're able to really progress at the speed of things. So for SACCOs, I think you can create your broad parameters, growing your membership, loan book, etc. But the day-to-day activities of the strategy really have to reflect what is currently happening, and what is happening at a very fast changing rate. So I'll agree with you on that challenge, and confirm to you, none of these guys makes more than a 1-year strategy. Any other questions?
All right. Is there a question?
So I was hoping that by the end of this session, you are able to say a thing or two about artificial intelligence, about predictive analytics, about how we can be able to use data to progress our institutions. So these are things that we do. We actually have a data team that basically just helps people to crunch their data, make decisions, and introduce a little bit of AI here and there in our institutions. With different tools, we are licensed by some of those leading companies that do artificial intelligence, and this is the next frontier that we wish to bring to the Sacco movement to move it forward. So without any other questions, I think I would like to call it a day, and thank you all.
Just one.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chris, for this message to us. At the moment, I know there are several companies offering AI. Our colleagues in the law people, they have their AI called the working. What about us in this financial sector? Do we have a particular one which is inclined to our businesses, or is it we can move to anywhere?
I think it's still quite an emerging market and an emerging industry where there hasn't been a single defined AI tool that you would say this one is very good for financial institutions and all the other. But some of the very leading AI tools include what we are seeing here, Gemini, we've got ChatGPT, who are very, very intelligent in the way they are processing your data. But time will come where I believe we'll have serious tools around financial intelligence that can then bridge the gap that the others will probably not be getting. Yeah, so it's very interesting to hear that lawyers have got that. Because one of the things is, and I was having a talk about artificial intelligence with some other people who say, is this thing likely to fire us and take our jobs? And interestingly, today you need a lawyer to go to the court and stand and answer questions and be bold and talk tough. But you don't need a lawyer to know stuff. With artificial intelligence, if I just go and paste my court case there and tell it to write for me a sample judgment, it do the judgment. We have seen cases which have been determined by artificial intelligence. A judge just taking content, pasting it on this thing, it reads the judgment, and he's reading it for the first time as he stands in front of people, not knowing where the judgment will go. So some of these careers are becoming very interesting, and the impact of AI on them will be very interesting for them to see. So,
Omukia Umtata uses it.
Mkia Umtata, I mean, you can see his success rate. I'm glad to hear that he uses it, because his success rate is not close to the one we were being asked to choose the numbers, because he's actually using tools that are helping him to improve. Right, so thank you very much, and God bless.
All right, thank you very much. Let us appreciate Chris Gathingu.